right, welcome into the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. 4 nations are facing off. There are not 4 people here podcasting off. There were supposed to be, and then one person decided not to ghost us. Who knows? Maybe he'll show up. I don't know if he'll answer his phone, but welcome into the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. Jay DeCoster, Matt Merrifield, myself, Nick Burt. It has been a week and a half, it feels like, since we've last done a show. A lot of things have happened since then. A lot of things, including, well, us 3 being in the same building together for a basketball game that was going really wrong in the first half, and then everything got figured out in the second half. We got to see a legend of the college basketball game do his thing on the sidelines in Tony Stubblefield. What an incredible time that was. Jay DeCoster, have you come down from the high of watching Tony Stubblefield coach 40 minutes of college basketball?
I'm still mimicking his 3-point stance that he did like 80% of the game. He's just so incredibly locked in. That man, just a legend of our game right there. Just sitting in the 3-point stance every single defensive possession. Just absolutely love it.
I mean, he was getting down on the ground, like sometimes all fours. I'm like, what are we doing here? But I mean, he very much coached that team to a loss. Michigan State was down, I think, by like 15 or something close to that at halftime. And I turned to Jay DeCoster and I said, well, we know Tony Stubblefield teams in the second half, not so great. Turned out pretty well for Michigan State. Matt Merrifield, your camera still decided to not work for StreamYard. So how is it going? Obviously, a lot of basketball has happened since the last time we've talked, but also I know you may not know, but 4 nations are facing off. And as we record, it's the final time we may ever say that.
Yeah, it is quite sad, but I am quite excited for, we will never see 4 nations face off potentially ever again, as only 2 nations will be facing off on Thursday night. The 2 nations. I cannot wait, as I had to miss the first game of this series between USA and Canada due to Michigan State, Illinois on Saturday, which turned out to be a great, just all-around experience at the State Farm Center. 10 out of 10. Very nice arena for, I don't know how old it actually is, but very nice. It was a great atmosphere. There was a jersey hung upside down that really made my night and really, encapsulated Illinois' just overall evening. So yeah, overall 10 out of 10. Champaign, kind of an interesting place, but I am very excited for Thursday, and USA is going to win because hockey is an American sport.
That's an interesting take, but we do have to mention this at some point, is the banner hanging of Terrence Shannon Jr. at halftime. That was really the catalyst for Michigan State's second half comeback, because that very much cursed the Illinois team. Matt, give us, since you were in the building, like, what was the reaction when the banner was actually unveiled and it was upside down? Like, was it shock, or were people laughing?
It was odd because there was no like gasp. Like you would have thought like everybody would have all been mortified at the same time. That is not what happened. It was a lot of just confusion of like, I just thought of an analogy, but I'm not going to use it because it's not at all appropriate. So I'll share after the show. But it was, as it was slowly being unveiled, Allie Cohen was sitting next to me and friend of the program, and goes, "Oh my God, it's upside down." And I thought, no, it's not upside down. As soon as they like actually lift it up, it'll flip over or something. I don't know. I was optimistic about the event crew of the State Farm Center. It never flipped over. It just Well, they didn't even raise it at first. Because they were supposed to take pictures with it, and Terrence is just standing there, pointing at it like that's not right. And everybody just kind of looking around at each other like, did this happen? And it was just overall, the State Farm Center, I did just give it a lot of credit because it was very nice. The people that work there are what's wrong with this country. Because we walk in, we don't know where the media entrance is. Hi, we're supposed to go in the northeast entrance. We're walking the northeast entrance. We're media. Lady looks at me like I have 5 eyes. No. She goes, you gotta go to this entrance. Well, where is that? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You told me very confidently where I'm supposed to go. We end up finding it's right downstairs. We were very close by. We walk in, and then they're like, hey, where do we go for media? Oh, ask that person right there, the security guy. Hi, sir. Where do we go? Okay, walk down this hallway. See that guy? Ask him. We then go to ask him. We do a full lap around the whole lower bowl of the State Farm Center and still have not found the media entrance until an usher goes, ask that guy. And then we just walk past that guy and we see the sign that's pointing downstairs to where we had to go, and eventually found the media room at the State Farm Center. But you telling me go make it that person's problem is my biggest pet peeve, and it was rampant at the State Farm Center. I am glad Michigan State went in and took care of business, because they did not deserve the overall performance by the State Farm Center. Did not deserve to have winning basketball that night.
That sounds terrible. I mean, I have no words for what I just heard, because that very much does sound like, and Jay, you can confirm it for me, that very much sounds like something Illinois people would do.
Absolutely. It's like that university just sucks in general, but also because, Matt, because when we covered the women's team at Ann Arbor, the staff was very, very friendly. They were super helpful. They gave us free snacks too. That's going to be the opposite of your experience on Friday, because the Michigan staff at Chrysler are honestly the nicest people I've ever met in my life. I'm going to be honest with you.
I remember that trip very fondly, Jay. I believe our usher was Don at the Chrysler Center. I hope to see him again on Friday evening at the Chrysler Center. He will be the one person I look forward to meeting on Friday. Yes. Everybody else in that city,
nobody else. Like, it's
better watch out.
A hellhole. So
I always am never looking forward to my trip to Ann Arbor. Anyway, sorry. Let's get into gambling. I could rant about Big Ten schools all day.
I was just gonna transition us into college basketball since we were talking about it. Since the last time we have talked, the committee has convened, not our committee, the actual tournament committee. They have released the top 16 teams in the tournament as of now. So your top 4 seeds. We'll just kind of get your reactions to these. I know this happened on Saturday. Matt, I think you were driving during it, but we'll just go through it really quick. Like, half of these teams have lost already, so none of this really matters. Auburn was 1, Alabama was 2, Duke 3, Florida 4. Those were your 1 seeds. 5 was Tennessee, 6 Texas A&M, 7 Purdue, Houston 8. That's your 2 seeds. Your 3 seeds were Iowa State, Kentucky, Wisconsin, and Arizona. And your 4 seeds were Texas Tech, Michigan, Kansas, and St. John's. Matt, I'll go to you first. As I mentioned, like, half of these teams have lost already, so none of this truly matters. But your kind of overall reaction, I know we kind of talked about it. There's, one obvious team that I don't think should have been in there, but your overall thoughts on that top 16 we saw on Saturday.
Yeah, the obvious team is who Michigan State plays on Friday, and that's the Michigan Wolverines, being in as a 4 seed and not even being the last team in, as they still have Kansas behind them, which Kansas also shouldn't be there either. But after their loss on Saturday night, I think Kansas will end up being a 6 seed. And as I told you, I believe Saturday night, I can't wait for them to be a 6 seed. They're going to get paired up with Drake, or a very strong 11 that nobody wants to see. It'll be an easy 11-6 upset that always happens, and then you never have to see Bill Self again. Hunter Dickinson will get a one-way ticket to Shanghai, and hopefully he has studied up on his Mandarin. But Michigan, and Nick, we were talking about this today, they're in the Big Ten in conference play. Ken Pom says they're going to win the conference by 2 games. They're projected to go 16-4. State, Purdue, Wisconsin, Maryland, all projected to go 14-6 to finish. Michigan is 7th in offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency in the conference, behind Michigan State, Maryland, Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois, and UCLA in both categories. I just don't get it. I don't see it. They win a lot of close games, which great, and I understand winning is the only thing that matters. But this team doesn't. It just doesn't. Their one impressive feat is that they have 2 7-footers that can run a pick and roll together, which is cool. But I'm not impressed when I watch them. I don't look and go, wow, this team looks even at certain points of this year, there have been points this year where Purdue looks really good. There are points where Wisconsin looks unbeatable. Wisconsin, when they're right, looks great and might be the best team, in my opinion, in this conference. As much as I hated Maryland early in the year and I don't like Kevin Willard, that front court they have, where they do have true two big men down low, is a mismatch nightmare, and I am not looking forward to State's game in College Park next week. Illinois is an interesting team. They should be better than they are, and I think part of that's Brad Underwood's fault. And UCLA is getting good at the right time. And Michigan State's Michigan State. We've talked about them plenty, and I don't even know if they're the best team in that conference, but they've also shown points of dominance this year and also their shortcomings like every other team in this conference. Michigan hasn't shown me dominance. It's just kind of them skidding along. But hey, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. They have a couple tough matchups to finish out, including 2 games against State, so I guess we'll see. Otherwise, I don't have too many complaints with the top 16. Other than the SEC, I think it's getting a little bit too much favoritism. But what else is new?
Yeah, Jay, it's a very SEC-filled top 16. Obviously, we know they're the best conference in college basketball this year, but it does feel like a little bit of overkill. Do you think the conference is just that good, or do you think it's overkill? And kind of your other thoughts on this whole 16.
Yeah, no, I think the SEC is, incredible. You're getting top 10 matchups every single weekend. They're just going to cannibalize themselves. And, I can't remember who said, I think it was Jay Billis said, whoever wins the SEC tournament is not going to make a deep run in March. Honestly, I kind of agree with him because, whoever wins that tournament, there's a chance they're going to be just completely gassed from the amount of insane teams they have to play. And they're just going to get met up with some mid-major who's just hungry and ready to beat somebody. There's a decent possibility that happens, just how good the SEC is. So we'll have to see. No, I do agree with this list. I don't really have a lot of complaints. Matt, I go back to your Michigan point. I don't think they're the best team in the Big Ten, but with KenPom, I'm thinking they are. Their schedule is, I wouldn't say very favorable, but you got MSU on Friday at home. Go to Nebraska, that's actually a tough spot, but then you host Rutgers, you host Illinois, host Maryland. That's a tough game, and then you go to Breslin. They can definitely go. They can definitely win 4 or 5 of those matchups. So I just think it's just what the schedule looks like compared to all these other Big Ten teams. Other than that, I don't really have a lot of problem with that. Texas Tech is really damn good. Just how good the Big 12 is. Texas Tech is going to be a problem for these teams. And then, Kansas, they can get out. I didn't think Kansas should have been the top 16 anyway before their Utah loss, because I just think Kansas has been overrated all year. So other than that, I don't really have a problem with a lot of these teams. So.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned on Saturday, the broadcast said the next 2 teams that were just outside the top 16 were Michigan State and Marquette. You can easily probably fit those 2 in somewhere now. Obviously, Kansas probably drops out. You most likely on Friday, you're going to have, one of those 2 Michigan teams staying in there. Obviously, we will not see an updated version until Selection Sunday, which is now under a month away. I believe we're 25 days away or something like that. March is creeping towards us very quickly. But let's stay on the college basketball talk. I know we kind of talked about it, but let's go more in depth on the Michigan State Spartans. Depending on when this gets uploaded, it may be before the Purdue game. It may be after. Hopefully it's before, but it is a massive week for Michigan State basketball as they play Purdue at home on Tuesday, and then obviously on the road, Michigan against Michigan on Friday. Jay, we'll go to you first. Obviously, there was the win against Oregon, which we were there for, and then right after that was that just disgusting Indiana loss. And then right after that was just another, it was an uplifting victory against Illinois. It felt like we needed that one. What do you need to see from Michigan State in these next two games, and what do you expect to see, I guess, in these next two games?
Yeah, I mean, after the Indiana game, we all thought the sky was falling, and we thought, yeah, this is going to be a really rough month. And then they go out and beat Illinois as a 6.5 point, as a 7-point dog. Which, I mean, I think Illinois is a pretty solid team. I mean, I think they got really good, solid front court play. One of their guys was out for the year who had a pretty solid night. I can't remember his name. And they also got Casper, who's gonna play well almost every night. Illinois is a pretty solid team. That was just a massive win. Kohler was excellent. I did not really expect to see that out of him. I mean, he showed that in the first, parts of December and then early January, but he's really, really come on, which has been really nice to see. For this game, I mean, look, Braden Smith's one of the best guards in the country. I mean, you're gonna have to be able to stop him. Lawyer's a really good presence down low. I mean, Kaufman-Wren's been taking a huge jump. If you have to contain Braden Smith, I mean, we're gonna have to get really good play out of Akins and Fears defensively in order to get a win here. Because, I mean, I think they'll be able to win this game. Honestly, I mean, MSU's a 4.5 point favorite. I will not be surprised if they cover that number. Honestly, just because. Just massive stakes. I think honestly the Indiana game it was with all the storylines with Izzo. Honestly, I think they just completely overlooked them with the 2-3 zone as well. Indiana is a bad team, but I mean that's a solid roster on paper, so they're not going to overlook Purdue. They never do. They always give Matt Painter their toughest test. I think they'll be able to win that. And as for Friday, if we're going to get into that. I mean, look, your Danny Wolf and Golden are going to be a problem. You're going to need to get Cooper's best defensive efforts and Sapala and Kohler. We'll see how that goes because Michigan State hasn't really played a team yet with two dominant guys like that. You could say UCLA too, but other than that, like they haven't played like two very good big men yet, other than the UCLA game. So it's going to be a big challenge. If you're able to go 2-0, then you're looking at you're kind of back in the driver's seat for the Big Ten. Honestly, we need a split here. I mean, you cannot afford to go 0-2. 1-1 would be I'd be honestly happy with 1-1, but 2-0 would be ideal for the Big Ten. So,
and then Matt, obviously you are more ingrained in the program, given obviously impact and you basically following this team across the country, except to LA, obviously. But kind of what are your thoughts for this week? Obviously, it's two massive games. What do you kind of expect to see from this team? Do you think we're going to see what we saw on Saturday against Illinois in both of these games? Or do you think it's going to be like the Indiana game that we saw last week?
I mean, and everybody's kind of talking about, and here down the stretch, Michigan State has the toughest, not just schedule on paper of while they play of their final 6 games. They have 5 ranked opponents. They also have the most games of which are on 2 days rest. I think of their final 6, or at least 3 of them are on 2 days rest. Like this game's on 2 days rest coming up tomorrow against Purdue. Michigan's on 2 days rest. And then they have, I believe, the Michigan game on senior day is 2 days rest as well. So I think that's only those 3. But still, that's a really tight turnaround for the staff that I think that's really done a really good job this year. Not just bringing in Sadie Washington, but I think everybody on that staff's done a really nice job. And I've never, even in State's losses this year, I don't think it's ever been a matchup issue necessarily where State just looks outmatched. I mean, they've been in pretty much every game this year. They really haven't gotten blown out by anybody. And I think the biggest thing coming in this next week in these next 3 games, Purdue, Michigan, Maryland, is Jackson Kohler, who's been playing his best basketball as of late. I mean, he had that 23-point performance on Saturday, but in his last 6 games, he's averaging 10 and 8.5 rebounds. 10 points, 8.5 rebounds a game. He's grabbing offensive boards like nobody's business, like what he's been doing all year, but he's helping that here in these last couple games as well. I mean, if he continues to play at that level, at an all Big Ten level, that's going to be absolutely crucial, and I think that puts State over the top. And then Xavier Booker, who has been non-existent the last couple weeks, pretty much since before Christmas in that Oakland game. I mean, knocked down the 1-3 he took on Saturday, and Tom Izzo did say he's going to have a performance coming. Like it's coming. People just have to be patient. And I mean, we've been patient with Xavier Booker for the last 2 years. And he obviously had that little spurt in December. I think it's coming, and it needs, I mean, if it's going to come, it needs to come these next 2 weeks against the matchup State has down low. Trey Kaufman-Renn, Wolf and Goldman on Friday, and then Queen and Julian Reese against Maryland in College Park. I'm excited about this State team, especially on Tuesday against Purdue, because I think State matches up really well. Because, Jay, you mentioned Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, and Trey Kaufman-Renn. That's Purdue's basketball team. And they do have good complementary pieces. Cox has been strong. Caleb First is a good piece. Miles Colvin is a nice player off the bench. That's it. Like, they're a three-headed monster. And if you can cut off one of the heads, they're going to be really vulnerable. I think State, their three-point defense has been stellar all season long, but really as of late, especially in the second half, Nick, I shared with you earlier, Michigan State's defense in the second half is holding opponents to 1 for 27 in the last 3 games. That is that's insane. Indiana only took 3 threes in the second half of that game last Tuesday, but still, Illinois could make a 3. Oregon couldn't when they fell apart. So State's defense, if they comes out and they play with the effort they played against Illinois in pretty much almost the entire game, I think State wins tomorrow. Friday's going to be a war, I think, against Michigan State. I give State the slight advantage simply because Michigan's never played in this rivalry. I mean, it's almost an entirely new team in a new rivalry where State knows what to expect. I know it's on the road, but I still think State has that edge in that from that aspect. But I mean, I can't wait. We've been waiting for this for 5 years for a stretch like this, and it's time to see what State can do.
And as you were talking, Matt, we have welcomed Justin Walsh into the show, late arriving, but he is still here. So, Jay Walsh, just to start off, we're going to throw you right into the fire. Big week for Michigan State basketball. Obviously, Purdue on Tuesday, Michigan on Friday. If you look past that, then you got Maryland next week. It is going to be a massive stretch of games for Michigan State. What are you expecting to see from this team, and what are you hoping to see from this team in these next 2 to 3 games?
Well, what I'm kind of expecting to see is not necessarily like the world-beating team that we thought that they could be when they won 14 games in a row earlier in this season, but I think we're going to see closer to what that team was than what they were kind of over the 4-game stretch where they lost 3 straight, obviously blowing the 2 in LA and then coming back home and losing to Indiana. But I think we're going to see a lot closer to what this team was a little bit earlier, in that I think they've kind of reeled it in a little bit again on defense. They've kind of come to grips with the fact that they can't really shoot at this point. I still, for the life of me, don't know why some of the guys on this team can't seem to shoot threes, but I think they're starting to realize it. We're continually not taking that many 3-point shots. I think a lot of that strategy has to do with the continued development of the bigs. And obviously I came in kind of on the latter part of what Matt was saying there, but talking about Xavier Booker, he's going to be a huge part of this team moving forward, particularly on the offensive end. If he can figure out a little bit of the offensive game and kind of how to get consistently involved on that end, I think that's going to open things up for MSU a lot. And I also just want to give a quick shout out also in the bigs rotation. One of the kind of, I don't want to say unsung heroes because I don't really want to go quite that far, but it has kind of been going under the radar a little bit that Carson Cooper has very quietly become like a suitable Big Ten center. I mean, he's not going to be like a star player or anything like that, but he's been giving very solid minutes over the last month and a half. And I mean, against Illinois, he had a very solid game. I mean, again, nothing really in the stat sheet jumps out at you, but 8 rebounds, I think he had, went like 3 for 4 from the field, just solid, efficient performance. And he's really been kind of doing that a decent amount lately. So I think he is going to be another person that we're really going to have to rely on because, I mean, Zapala has not been great recently. Obviously, you'd like to see him bounce back a little bit to kind of his early season form, but you can't necessarily count on that. The biggest thing that I'm hoping to see from this team moving forward and from one specific player is Jaden Akins needs to wake up. He has really, really struggled lately. I mean, I can't remember the last time he had a game where he shot over 50% from the floor and actually put together a solid scoring performance. Especially, I mean, beyond the 3-point line, he has been just absolutely miserable this year. So if this team is going to win a Big Ten championship and kind of make a run in March, he is going to need to kind of step up and become that guy. I'm not saying he needs to become like a Cassius Winston where he's taking over games, but he needs to be somebody that they can consistently rely on for 12 to 15 points and get them a couple threes a night. Not to mention the fact that, I mean, he needs to continue being who he is on defense, which that part I think he will continue to do. But he is probably the biggest part of this team moving forward, in that if he figures it out down the stretch, they can become a very dangerous team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just along for the ride at this point. Where it ends, who knows? This team has already kind of exceeded my expectations this year. I don't think I know I didn't. I know a few other people thought we'd be better than we've been in the past few years. I thought it would just be another kind of mediocre year that we've had the past few years. So I mean, it is what it is at this point. I'll go around really quick, just quick yes or no answer. Jay, I'll start with you. Obviously, given the schedule left, given what's left for the rest of the Big Ten, can Michigan State at least share the regular season title this year?
I definitely think they can, because I do agree with Matt that Michigan doesn't know this rivalry. The team in general doesn't. I mean, like, these guys are from, like, Golden's from FAU and Wolf is from Yale. Like, this is a big boy type of performances you got to put on. So I definitely think they can. Maryland's going to be really tough. I don't think they win that, but I'm not going to go game by game here. I definitely think they can, but they got to get the 3-point shooting intact. And I guess even a share, like, if they're going to make a Final Four run, it's going to come down to shooting, man, or just really good defense, because they just don't have the 3-point shooting right now in order to make that happen. Now, if Akins comes along, I mean, we'll see. But right now, I definitely think they can. Am I confident in that? It's 50-50. Just the schedule's tough. Just start with Purdue tomorrow, beat them, and if you can get a win on Friday, then we're in the driver's seat. But it's gonna be tough. But they got the rebound, and they got the defense now. I mean, you got to be able to shoot the ball. So can they do it game by night on a nightly basis coming up? We'll see.
Matt, same question to you. With what's left, do you think this team can at least share the regular season title?
If had you asked me on Saturday afternoon before Purdue lost to Wisconsin, I would have said yes, because I would have said Michigan State and Purdue were going to tie for it. If State sweeps Michigan, like I think they're going to, I think it's going to be tough for State not to share it, just because I do think State's going to win tomorrow, and I think State's winning on Friday. And Purdue, with that loss against Wisconsin, I think kind of played themselves out of it, even though I think they're only losing one game the rest of the way. I think Purdue's winning out after tomorrow, because their schedule is very favorable, even with the Indiana and Illinois games on the road. Michigan, they've won, 6 in a row by 4 or less. They haven't won a game by more than 4 points since January 12th, when they played Washington. That they have after they've won the 6 in a row. Then they played Purdue, where they got blown out, and then they had the Northwestern overtime win that people forget about at home. I mean, games that close are coin flips when you get down to the final stretch. And eventually the coin's going to start flipping the other way. And they have Michigan State on Friday. Then they go to Lincoln, one of the hardest places to play in the last couple of years on the road. I guess Nebraska hasn't been as good at home this year, but they're on the bubble, and that would go a long way for Nebraska to win. So they're going to be hungry. Rutgers at home, they're probably going to win. Michigan, Illinois is always a battle, regardless of where that game is played. And it's their first meeting of the year. And Illinois, I'm waiting for them to wake up and start knocking down shots. People are talking about the state's 3-point shooting. Look at Illinois' conference 3-point percentage. It's below 30% for a team that shucked up. I don't even know how many threes, 30 something threes on Saturday night. Like that team's got to, I think they'll eventually figure it out because Brad Underwood isn't stupid, even though sometimes he likes to show you that he might be, even though I want to like Brad Underwood as a coach, and then he does what he does. And there's a reason Illinois doesn't win in March. And then Maryland, Michigan State back-to-back to finish out. Like I see 3 losses there. There's the only game I don't think they're losing is Rutgers. The other ones they could all very easily lose. I'll say Michigan loses 3 games the rest of the way, which puts them at 5 losses. And I don't think State's losing. State might lose 2. So I guess in a long-winded way, yes, I think State's going to at least share. But I think they honestly might win outright.
And then Jay Walsh, same question to you. Close it out. Do you think they can at least share the Big Ten title at this moment?
I do think that they can share it. I think there's no way that they win it outright without sweeping Michigan, but I think even if they do split with Michigan, I do think they still have a chance to share. Obviously, getting that sweep against Michigan would be massive in their Big Ten title hopes. But I do still think that if they manage to just get 1 game against Michigan, I think they still can, because I do agree with Matt that I think they are going to beat Purdue on Friday or tomorrow. I'm not that sold on Purdue. I mean, they're a good team. They've got good players, but they don't really frighten me. I like the matchup a lot better than I like the way MSU matches up against Michigan. So of those 2 teams, Michigan worries me more than Purdue, just in terms of the way that they match up with their 2 7-footers. And then Wisconsin is just kind of hanging around there. I mean, they've got a relatively favorable schedule down the stretch. Obviously, they have to go to MSU, but outside of that game, they really don't have any super losable games left. So I could easily see Wisconsin kind of sneaking in there, but I think if MSU gets at the very least a split against Michigan, I think they have a decent shot to get a share. If they get the sweep against Michigan, I think they have a decent shot to get it outright.
I kind of fall the same way as you, Jay Walsh. I think if it's a Michigan sweep, I think there's a very real possibility it can be outright. I think they've played themselves into position where, honestly, I think they could probably lose one. Well, obviously it will depend, but I think they can most likely lose Michigan on Friday and Maryland. Maybe only one of those. I think they can still lose 2 with how the conference is going to play out and still share a title. They'd obviously have to win all the other games in there, but I think they've played themselves into a good position right now. Obviously, we'll see where it falls from there. But again, like I said, this team is more than I expected it to be at this point. So I really can't complain about things. Things I can complain about, though, because I know Jay DeCoster asked me pre-show to make a comment, and I just said they're a basketball team. The UConn Huskies, that was a disaster on Saturday. I will not be one of the UConn fans that are blaming refereeing, even though it was terrible. You should not be in a position to blame refereeing against a Seton Hall team that is 213th in the KenPom. It's just as simple as that. Don't be in that position. And yeah, that's all I've got to say. Jay, do you have anything to add on either about UConn or any other college basketball team in general before we move on from college hoops?
There's just, I don't know. I like Danny Hurley, and I'm not gonna be hating here. There's just a little tad bit funny, him just flexing his rings on the Creighton crowd. It's a nice win for them, and then to do that on Saturday was not ideal. That's all I have to say. Not hating, but I'm just saying.
Hey, sometimes you got to flex those rings on Omaha, Soviet Union. As Matt has had to have explained to him this week, And I think a lot of people have had to explain the whole Omaha and Soviet Union thing that happened on Twitter this week. Matt, do you have any final comments on college hoops for the week?
I really don't. The midweek slate kind of stinks this week, which is unfortunate. I just looked through the slate for tomorrow, for Tuesday. Other than Michigan State, Purdue, it's kind of slim pickings. Illinois, Wisconsin, I think will be a fun game. And then UConn will probably incinerate Villanova at the XL Center in Hartford. But 8.5 points is a large spread. I don't know if I have the balls to play some doubloons on that. But hey, we got, 4 weeks until we get a bracket, so I can't wait.
And then Jay Walsh, you have any parting comments on college hoops?
I just want to start out kind of piggybacking off the previous UConn conversation by saying that clearly at this point in the season, St. John's is the preeminent program in the Big East. Say what you will about Rick Pitino, the person, but God damn it, he's a damn good basketball coach. The dude is inevitable, although they've got big tests coming up on Wednesday, traveling to beautiful Wintrust Arena in Chicago, Illinois, taking on the mighty Blue Demons. It'll be a fun one to keep track of. But yeah, I definitely don't want to end up with St. John's on my side of the bracket as if I'm a college basketball coach right now. So the dude is just inevitable. That's all I got to say.
To piggyback off that St. John's comment, I really have nowhere to speak, but it's a rather big game on Sunday, live from Storrs South. I know Matt wishes he could be there for that environment because I know he got to experience it with, Rutgers and Michigan State, but St. John's UConn at the Garden, that's going to be incredible, even though UConn isn't that great this year. But yeah, let's move on though, because 4 nations are facing off. We've only mentioned it 3 times so far in this show, and that's not enough because I don't think enough people know that 4 nations are facing off. And for the first and potentially last time, Matt, I'll go to you first because obviously, I think us two are the more hockey-centric people on this show. I think Jay and Jay Walsh would agree with that. But we've had a ton of discussion about the 4 nations since it started basically on Wednesday of last week. I know what the answer is going to be, but your overall thoughts as we approach the championship game on Thursday, which will be U.S.-Canada, a rematch of Saturday's game, which I'm sure we'll get into in a moment. Just your overall thoughts on this whole 4 nations thing.
I mean, it was the biggest success hockey has had. I don't know on how long. I mean, maybe you can help me figure it out because this has obviously been a huge success. And part of it is the fact that this is just a novelty. We haven't had international hockey between these teams since the 2014 Olympics with professional guys getting to play for their country. So will I expect it to be this hard-hitting, tough-nosed, electric atmosphere in the World Cup or in the Olympics? And I mean, I think the Olympics will be great in 2 years, and but will it be like this? Probably not. And I think that's why we need to enjoy Thursday night because it's something hopefully we never have to worry about experiencing again. Hopefully we just have international hockey consistently, where it's just kind of the part of the mainstay. Because even when it was a mainstay, international hockey was still great. It's just this has been amped up to another level because it's been so long, and we also have Terra Force going on. We have our geopolitical climate is just also feeding into it, even though it really doesn't make that big of a difference. But overall, I think it's been a huge success, and I'm just glad it is going the way it is, and I can't wait for Thursday night because it is the biggest hockey game of my life, and I cannot wait to actually sit down and watch it. I was upset I missed it Saturday, but getting Thursday night is going to be appointment television, as I texted you earlier, Nick.
Yes. To your question of this is hockey's best idea since who knows when, I don't know if you feel the same way. I'd honestly venture to say it's hockey's biggest, positive since the lockout in 2005. it honestly feels like Gary and, the NHL, like, it's been doing fine. They haven't had many successes since the lockout in 0405. This kind of feels like, at least to me, it's this and like the reinvention of outdoor games, like late 2000s. Would you kind of agree with that, of getting hockey kind of back in the mainstream?
I would, even though it's kind of, and as somebody who is so just dialed into hockey, as it's just been a part of me. I mean, I'm, just so it's kind of different for me. I know how much I appreciate it, and obviously I know how much you appreciate it too, Nick. And I mean, I guess Jay Walsh and Jay are kind of the exceptions, even though I know they're both hockey fans. Jay Walsh, you're from Detroit, so hockey at least is part of the culture somewhat. It just, like, still there are people being like, "Oh, I didn't know this was going on." And I guess it's good that they're now paying attention, but like hockey is just kind of its own thing, where I think it's more important. I don't know if it's more important because how much can the sport actually grow from this? I don't know. But at the very least, you're making hockey fans appreciate it and you're making them happy. And to the comment of every city has 20,000 hockey fans that are season ticket holders, nobody else cares. At least those 20,000 people in every city are locked into hockey in a fashion that I haven't seen before. And I love that. So whether or not the average fan or the non-average fan pays attention on Thursday, I mean, we had 4.5 million people tune in Saturday night. That is great, but I'm just more excited for the fact that the people that really enjoy hockey are it's so much fun. It's actually tune in, and the hockey's great, and the people are talking about it. And I'm, everybody I know that likes hockey somewhat are talking about these games.
Jay Walsh, we'll go to you next. Kind of your overall thoughts, because I mean, as we've said, this feels like it's been a massive success for hockey, for the NHL. Just your kind of overall thoughts as we approach Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. As somebody who has never really been a huge hockey guy, I mean, like Matt said, I grew up in the Detroit area, so hockey naturally has just kind of been always there as I've been growing up. My family has never been huge into hockey, but I've always kind of paid rough attention to it. This has been the biggest that I've seen hockey around here in a long time. And I mean, that's partially due to the fact that the Wings have been terrible for a while, but I mean, there's a guy at my work who's a diehard hockey fan, and so I've had conversations with him before. But I mean, I came into work today and was talking about the USA-Canada match from Saturday with my coworkers, who none of us pay attention like that to hockey. So I mean, I do think that this is kind of reaching an audience that it wouldn't. I mean, the normal NHL All-Star game, there's no chance that it would be being talked about this much. So I think that this is a phenomenal job by the NHL, phenomenal job by just the sport of hockey in general, just making this happen. And obviously, I mean, like Matt said, I do think it's definitely getting a little bit, the excitement and kind of energy around it is a little bit bloated because of all the kind of geopolitical stuff that's happening right now. Obviously, Thursday being the battle over the 51st state and all, but I do think that this is a very good thing for hockey. It's made me pay more attention. I mean, I sat down and watched the Canada USA game on Saturday just because, I mean, I can't remember the last time I literally sat down and just watched a full hockey game. I watched that full game because it was just a phenomenal game. Obviously, I mean, 3 fights in the first 10 seconds doesn't exactly shake the attention away, but it was just a phenomenal game to watch. Very well played on both sides. Obviously, you're going to get the rematch on Thursday. I think this is a very good thing for hockey. It's bringing in, like I said, an audience that it ordinarily would not be bringing in. So I think this is a very good thing.
And then, Jay, we'll go to you. Your overall thoughts as we approach the championship game on Thursday.
Same with Jay Walsh, though. I'm saying, like, I know my fair share of hockey, but I'm not like a diehard like you and Matt are. Like, I grew up in my childhood with the fortunately the Hawks have won 3 cups. Like that's what kind of got me into hockey. And my family likes hockey, but it's not like it's not my first sport. But no, that game, like I'm not like huge in the NHL regular season. Like I'll follow it here and there, but that game's like kind of brought me back to like, man, this is what I watched like when I was little. It's like this is like fun hockey to watch. And obviously I'll be locked in the playoffs and stuff, but that was like really fun to watch. And it's a great idea by the NHL just to do this because like the All-Star game in general and all these sports is just very bland. Like you saw what the NBA did last night. Like nobody's watching that. It's just great theater to have when, nothing's going on, especially when it's international hockey. We haven't had this since 2014. It's great that the NHL players are playing this again. It's not just college kids. So it's great for the sport. And honestly, like I think the NHL needed something like this, or just hockey needed something like this because I feel like just a lot of the casual fans are going to tune in to when the Stanley Cup playoffs begin because Stanley Cup playoffs are a lot of fun. But this is something that was very fun to watch. You got 3 fights, just very physical. Like the players aren't just like half-assing it. It was just a lot of fun, honestly. And I'm very excited for Thursday and see what that brings. So it was just like very fun to watch just for somebody who grew up watching it a lot and cheered on those good Blackhawks teams. And it's good to like finally get back into that again. So.
Yeah. And I'd go back even to the beginning of February. A lot of hockey people were just kind of questioning this because there wasn't a lot of hype around it. Like we joke the 4 Nations facing off thing, the commercial with Crosby saying it twice. That was basically it. Like you'd see that, like ESPN would throw it on every once in a while, but really you'd only see those like during hockey games. And I think a lot of people were doubting this, that it wasn't going to do great ratings. We were wondering if the players were really going to be bought in. And then we saw Wednesday happen, which was the opening game, the Canada-Sweden game. And to me, I'll ask Matt too, because it felt like a playoff game. And I'd say most of these have felt like a playoff game. The only one that kind of didn't feel that way was that Finland-USA game. But it was there for like 40 minutes, and then the U.S. just pulled away in the third. I would say the players have done a absolutely phenomenal job of also selling this because they've come out and they've played like these are the most important games they'll ever play. And for some of them, it may be. You never know when you're going to get this opportunity again. Obviously, we have the Olympics coming up next year, but it's a completely different game when you go to the Olympics. Any of that stuff you saw on Saturday, you would never see that in the Olympics. 1, because fighting is banned at the Olympics, and 2, because half of the hits you saw would probably be majors and game misconducts at the Olympics. And that's kind of just how it plays out with Olympic rules. So for the NHL, getting this done a year in advance to get people excited about 2026 it's an absolutely brilliant move by them. I know we critique Gary Bettman a lot because he doesn't make a lot of good decisions, it feels. It's up there as one of his best. And hopefully it seems like the framework is in place for international hockey to stay. And I think the biggest thing is you can't oversaturate it. And I think the plan right now, with it being every 2 years, whether it be the Olympics or whether it be a World Cup, I think that's the perfect amount of time. Every 2 years, you're going to have best on best. You're not oversaturating it. And it still makes it feel special. I don't know if anybody kind of wants to add on to those points before we do a full kind of preview for Thursday, but I mean, it feels like this has been a major, major success.
Yeah, I do just want to add. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead, Joe. Why don't you go first?
I do just want to say one more thing, and it's something that I've been seeing people talk about on Twitter, and it's just kind of another credit to the NHL here, where I mean, we fairly recently had the Pro Bowl games for the NFL, which everyone knows are a joke. And then obviously this past weekend you saw the NBA All-Star activities, which I mean, nobody really gives a shit. I mean, you have guys who are never going to see game time in the league dominating the dunk contests. I mean, nobody really takes it seriously. And then you see this for the NHL where, I mean, these guys are acting like their lives are on the line in these games. So I think it really went a long way in showing the kind of casual viewer that, hey, if you want to watch kind of an all-star activity or kind of an out of season activity that actually is entertaining and fun to watch, why don't you give hockey a try? Because obviously, I mean, football and basketball are not getting the job done. Obviously, I mean, the baseball all-star game is okay. The home run derby is kind of gone downhill in recent years, but I think there's no question that the Four Nations Facing Off has been by far the best kind of all-star activity of any of the four major sports in the last several years.
Yeah, my thing with the whole All-Star game, I'm glad you brought it up, Jay Walsh, with the other sports. And Nick, we kind of talked about this of the NHL is unique, and the sport of hockey is unique because the international scene, at least of the four major sports, hockey isn't just America's sport. I mean, it's not, it's Canada's sport, but like baseball's the closest second, where the countries in the Caribbean, Japan is very strong. Like there is other countries that can go toe to toe with the United States. Basketball and football, it's America. Like in the NBA, people are suggesting next year, U.S. versus the world. Like that wouldn't, I don't think that wouldn't come close to this because the United States would still probably win. And the world, like those world players, yes, they're trying to play against America, but it's like the vibe of hockey where it's in a USA Canada specifically of, you know, as somebody who grew up playing hockey in Metro Detroit, so we play Canadian teams all the time in tournaments. You do not want to lose to a Canadian team. If you went to London or Toronto or anywhere in Canada to play in a tournament, you wanted to win, and you knew even going in, as unserious as it sounds for you sports, that, you know, the officials who were Canadian weren't going to want to see the American team win. Like there was pride of you're going against Canada and you're trying to beat them at their own sport. And then when Canadian teams would come here, you're trying to beat them at their own sport. So like this has been ingrained for the players for the United States and Canada that this rivalry is just natural. Since the first time, you know, you played against a Canadian team, it's always US versus Canada. I grew up, there was a tournament we played in growing up every Thanksgiving where it was Canadian teams versus American teams. I forget what the hell we called the tournament, where even within the games, you only played Canadian teams, but you were also earning points for the U.S. And there was a championship game, but then there were still points on the line where even if you were in the fifth place game against the other fifth place Canadian team, you were earning points for the U.S. to win or Canada to win. And that was one of the most fun tournaments because he was unique and we got to wear USA stuff. And that was one of the most fun tournaments I've ever played in because it is like this, where you're playing for your country. And even next year in the Olympics, I still think it'll be great. And I think the biggest thing for Thursday is the U.S. hockey has to use this as the catapult for next year, regardless of who wins. 12 months from now, these teams are meeting up in Milan. Is that where the Olympics are, Nick?
Yep.
Yeah, they're meeting up in Milan, and they're going to see each other again. And sure, it won't be the exact same style. Who cares? They're going to play each other again. You're going to see this again. Also, some of the other better players in the world, Leon Draisaitl, who isn't playing in this tournament, he'll get to play. Slovakia and Czechia are both very strong hockey countries now. You're going to see best on best next year. So I just absolutely love this, and hockey is unique where they can do this. I don't know if doing this international stuff would work for the other sports. I know the NBA was an absolute disaster class yesterday, which I would love to talk about. I'm not sure we're going to, which I'm fine not talking about it, but it was also hilariously how bad the NBA handled it. Overall, this has just been a success, and it's awesome to see the sport actually have a win for once like this. It's just, it has been a while. So like Nick and I talked about earlier.
Yeah. Let's get into Thursday. Let's just do a preview on it. it is going to be. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it's given that it's on ESPN. I don't want to make this prediction, but it may be the most watched hockey game this season, especially given that the Stanley Cup is on TNT this year. Ratings most likely will be down because you're not on like an ABC. I wish this game was on ABC on Thursday, but we have to do a new episode of Extreme Makeover Home Edition instead. Jay Walsh, go to you first. Your overall predictions for Thursday. Do you think we see a similar game that we saw on Saturday? Or do you think we're going to see something completely different given that like an actual trophy is on the line in this game?
I honestly kind of think we're in for a relatively similar game. Just simply because, I mean, I think, as I said, I am far from the biggest hockey expert on the planet, but I have really kind of gotten into this. I've had discussions with all the people I know that are big into hockey. I've kind of gotten their thoughts on this. From everything that I've gathered and everything that I have seen, and obviously, I mean, what I watched in that Canada-US game, I think the U.S. has the advantage on the defensive line and in the goal. I mean, Hellebuck, I think, is probably one of the best goalies in the world at this point, one of the best ones in the NHL. He looked phenomenal in that Canadian game. Obviously, I mean, McDavid got the one goal at the beginning, but there was very little that Hellebuck was going to be able to do to stop that. And aside from that, he was pretty much locked down. And I think, I mean, the U.S. has a very solid defensive line. Obviously, Canada has the advantage with the forward spot. I mean, McDavid is McDavid. Not really much you can do about him. Crosby is still Crosby. They've got the advantage up front. So they are definitely going to be able to score if they need to. But I do think that the U.S. is going to be able to keep the score relatively low. And I think we're going to be able to get enough goals to make a difference. I could see this game being kind of a 4-2, 3-2 kind of game, but I do think the U.S. pulls it out again.
Jay, we'll go to you next. Your overall thoughts on Thursday night.
I don't think it's not going to be, I think Canada will give much better effort in this one, but I do agree. Like US is the better defensive team. Hellebuck is the best goaltender in the NHL right now. Faber from Minnesota is one of the best defensemen in the league. Like they're just all top to bottom a better defensive team. Honestly, with Dylan Larkin, I think he's on the 3 or the 4th line. He had a goal and assist. If you're able to get a contribution out of him there, I mean that's huge for US if they can do that again. Getzel was outstanding. If you're gonna get performances like that from the guys that you don't expect like them to, not like the Austin Matthews or the Jack Eichels. If you're gonna get performances like that again, like US should win this again. Just great defensive performance. I'm expecting it again. I think the US gets it done here. I'll say 2-1, a low scoring battle here. So.
Matt, we'll go to you next. Obviously, you did not get to watch the game on Saturday, but I know you know everything that happened. But your thoughts for Thursday?
Yeah, yesterday, actually, my original plan was to watch the entirety of the game on my drive back from Champaign because it's a 4.5-hour drive and really didn't have much else to do. But then Allie Cohen decided that she didn't want to drive anymore. And so I then had to drive the last 3 hours. So I never actually got to watching the game, unfortunately. But this game is game 7, and that's the feel it has already going in. That's the feel the players are going to have. I believe it was Brady Tkachuk that said on Saturday was the biggest game of his life. And this one obviously is topping that. I think this one I feel there's a lot of similarities between this game and Florida, Edmonton last June, Nick. Edmonton obviously led by Connor McDavid, but they have tons of firepower on offense. Goaltending leaves some to be desired. Better defense core, especially with Cale Makar being in the lineup. And I know he played today, and I think that makes a difference. But the United States has the better goaltending. And having a guy, and they have multiple guys like him, but Matthew Tkachuk is a hockey player I don't want to play against in a game 7. Like, yes, he's not the most skilled player, but having that combination of skill and size is beautiful, and I can't wait for the San Jose Sharks to find a player that plays like that, because that's the type of guy that wins you a Stanley Cup. That's the leader that is in front of the net and is going to put his face through the goal to put a puck in, or will drop the gloves off a face-off to start the game. That energy. I mean, Brady Tkachuk's a pretty similar player, but something about Matt Tkachuk and that team. I think Matt Tkachuk scores the game-winning goal. I think it's going to be maybe it's more scoring because Game 7 last year was 2-1. Maybe there is more scoring simply because there's just more talent on the ice. But I think the United States wins a real close one. Maybe it goes to overtime. I wouldn't be surprised if it does. I wouldn't be surprised if Canada wins. But I just, but Game 7, I'm taking the better goaltender, and I'm taking the team that I feel like is, I'll say it, grittier. So give me the United States.
I'm going to open this with this. Do you know who has never lost a Game 7 in TD Garden, Matt?
Oh, God. Is it Brad Marchand?
I have no idea. The answer I was looking for is Jordan Binnington.
Oh, dear Lord. Hey, you know what? I did think about this today. When Jordan Binnington was playing that Stanley Cup final, he was the goalie I wanted in net, and I was rooting for the Blues. I still want him to be the goalie in net on Thursday, but this time I'm rooting for the U.S., so keep that in mind. But how the tables have turned.
Yeah. He has left a lot to be desired. Today was his best game, and then the last 5 minutes of the game happened, and he let in, it was like 3 and 2 minutes, it felt like. That game became very close, very fast for no reason whatsoever. Goaltending, it wins you games. Sadly, the U.S. has the better goaltending, and it is led by one of the greatest lawn equipment franchises in Southeast Michigan, the Hellybucks. So shout out. That's a great green and white reference there, me and Matt. That's a incredible Macomb County establishment. Great job, guys. But I told Matt on Sunday, I said, a lot of U.S. people getting really, really cocky about a game where no trophy was on the line and it was just a group stage game. What does that feel like? Feels like 2010 when the U.S. won the group stage game. And then on February 28th, 2010, the gold medal game in Vancouver went to overtime. Iginla to Crosby, back of the net. Canada wins the gold. I have an eerie feeling we may see the same thing on Thursday. Obviously, Iginla is long retired, but Crosby is still very much in this game. I believe he is still the top points getter in this Four Nations, and he is the oldest player there. I have an odd feeling that we may see something similar on Thursday. Jordan Binnington leaves a lot to be desired. I am begging for him not to start, but today was the day you replace him if you were going to replace him. He is going to be the starter on Thursday, and it is what it is at this point. At this point, he either is going to have the game of his life and he's going to look like 2019 Binnington that wins the Blues the Stanley Cup at TD Garden, or he looks like what we've seen most of this tournament and is letting in stupidly easy goals. I'm not really sure what we're going to see. It's probably going to be the latter, but I hope Canada wins this, obviously. As I am wearing the red and cream right now. This is an incredible jersey. I will say Fanatics, we give Fanatics a lot of shit. Incredible merchandise, incredible jerseys for this tournament. I do have to give credit where credit is due. This is the first thing they've done well in forever, it feels like. It feels disgusting to say that, but I do have to give credit where credit is due. I truly do think the U.S. probably ends up winning this, but I mean, Crosby's won everything at the international level except a Four Nations Faceoff. And he has told us since basically January that 4 nations are facing off. And it feels right for him to win this. So I'm hoping and praying that it ends up like 2010 all over again, because I will just have so much fun on the timeline if that actually happens. I know a lot of people won't be excited to see that, but I will be having fun, and that's really all that matters. I mean, we're over an hour into this, so unless you guys have any parting thoughts, let's wrap it up here. Matt, do you have any parting thoughts on the 4 nations or anything in general?
Oh, I know. I don't know. I have no final thoughts. I thought I was going to try and say something clever to close it out for the United States, but I got nothing. All I know is I need cold beverages close by and easily accessible on Thursday night at 8 o'clock, whether that's at a local establishment or on my couch. I will be posted up. Appointment television, 8 p.m.
Yes, it's appointment television, 8 p.m. It probably won't start until 8:20. That's what most of this tournament has been. But Jay Walsh, your final thoughts for the evening.
All I know is that 4 nations are facing off.
Incredible. Jay, close us out. Your final thoughts.
All I know is I'm going to be watching the miracle speech from Herb Brooks before that game with many beverages in my hand. So there you go.
Incredible. Because great moments are born from great opportunities. And that is what they're going to have there on Thursday night.
None of you boo the Canadian national anthem. That song is too beautiful to be booed. I'm very upset that this game isn't being played in Toronto, so I could hear the crowd sing it in English. But that's my only complaint about this game, is it's being played in Boston. But otherwise, I don't know. I got nothing else.
Yeah. I have nothing else.
I will be watching. I might skip the anthem on Thursday, but I will be watching the national anthems from Game 7 against Edmonton in Florida, or Game 6, excuse me, the Game 6 national anthem between Edmonton and Florida. Google it. That will get you fired up for hockey, even though it's Canada propaganda.
You're not wrong. You are not wrong there. That is very much Canada propaganda there. But let's wrap it up there. Thank you for all of you joining in. Jade Koster, Matt Merrifield, Justin Walsh, even though you were late. Glad you could join us today. Thank you so much for watching this episode of 4 Men Podcasting Off, obviously. It is the Merrifield Sportsbook Show, though. So for Jay, for Matt, for Jay Walsh, thank you so much for watching. If you just stumbled across this, click like, click subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. I'm not even pushing top of the perch. We won on Sunday. I didn't even do a video because this is like the first day I've had a voice in a while. So shout out. That's fun. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. We will see you again at some point next week for another episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show.